Hey guys, welcome to Redneck Off the Range. Today we're going to do another saw review. This one is of the Hypertough 20 volt lithium circular saw. Now this is a very inexpensive saw that you can pick up at Walmart. It's definitely like probably the cheapest saw you can get, period, in a circular saw. Basically you get everything you see here for $40. And while it's a very basic saw, that's a pretty good deal if you ask me. So you get a 6.5 inch circular saw with a blade. You get one 20 volt 2 amp hour battery. You get a very basic charger, and you get this little guide in the kit as well. I'm not exactly sure how this works. I've never used one of these before, but it does come with that. It also comes with a, let's see, where is it? There it is. The Allen wrench for changing the blades. Now, there's really not a whole lot to say about this other than the fact that it is a very inexpensive saw. It does cut fairly well. I used it to make the very bench that it's sitting on. I cut this piece of plywood for the bench, and I also cut the supports underneath the plywood for this bench as well, and I used it to cut a couple other pieces of wood for another project as well. So it did do the job. Did do the job pretty well. It's not the smoothest cutting saw ever. But it is a circular saw, and they're not really known for making really smooth cuts, unless I guess you go to a much higher level. But it does do the job fairly well. So again, there's not a whole lot to say. You do have all the adjustments for making different angle cuts. I never really had a use for that. I always just do straight 90-degree cuts. It does not come with a light, or really any of the other options that you would see on a higher end level tool. It does not, if I can get around the camera here, it does not have a quick stop. You do have a lock button here, and it's on the other side too in case you're left-handed or right-handed. You just push it in, pull the trigger, and it does have to wind down before it stops. It does have a plastic blade guard that gets pushed out of the way as you cut, so you don't cut yourself. It's not like a high-end like aluminum or titanium or whatever the higher end saw. The blade cover. It's just a very basic plastic cover, so it could break if you are a little rough with this. If you just drop it on the ground, it might break, so just be aware of that. It is a cheap tool, so expect that it could break easily or more easily than your higher end tools. Now, as far as the batteries go, I didn't use it enough to wear the battery down, and this is just a very basic battery. Actually, I lied. It's a 1.5 amp hour battery. I thought it was a 2 amp hour. I think you can buy 2 amp hour batteries, and they are fairly inexpensive. Man. You can get a 2 amp hour battery, or maybe it's a 1.5, I don't remember, but let's just say a 2 amp hour battery for $16, $17. Now, it's just a basic battery. Basically looks like this. Does not have a fuel gauge or anything where you can check the level of the battery, so keep that in mind. But again, $16, $17 for a battery, whereas an equivalent size battery from, say, Makita would be about $80. So just keep that in mind. There's also a 2.5 amp hour battery you can get that does have a fuel gauge, and that's about $30 to $35, I believe. Now, Hypertough has not been around for a very long time. In fact, The brand itself, I think, has only been around a few years. As far as the power tools go, the cordless power tools anyway, I think they've only been around about 2 years. As far as I know, they have a 20 volt drill, impact, circular saw, reciprocating saw, and then they have some gardening tools or landscaping tools rather. Also, so they have like a couple different blowers, a couple different trimmers. I don't know if they have a hedge trimmer. They do have a pole saw and a small chainsaw, and then they also have like a portable power washer, which is basically like you hook it up to a hose and it basically shoots the water out faster. It doesn't have like a gas motor. It's just a battery powered motor that sprays the water out faster. So I guess it's compact, but I don't know about that one. I kind of tend to stick with gas operated power washers, but that's just me. But there are quite a few options, and I imagine there's going to be quite a few more as the years go on. So, you know, you never know. Maybe you'll see some oscillating multi-tools, maybe some jigsaws. You know, who knows? But again, they're going to be like bottom of the barrel as far as quality goes. But if you're just a DIY type of person like myself, you don't need to make a whole lot of cuts, don't need to drill a whole lot of holes or cut a whole lot of trees down. You just need to use it every once in a while. I think this would be a great option for you. The only reason I bought this particular saw over another brand is because I needed to make a few cuts to build this bench. I didn't have a whole lot of money, but I did want a circular saw, and I was going to go with a corded skill saw for like $30 or $35, and this was only like $10 more for a battery operated cordless saw. So if I ever needed to use one where I didn't have electric, I had that option. So I went with the cordless 20 volt Hyper-Tough, and so far so good. It's been a pretty decent saw, but again, it's very basic, does not have all the features of a more expensive saw, mainly a light and a quick stop. I kind of like a saw that can just stop instantly as soon as you take your hand off the trigger, so that in case you have to like drop it or for whatever reason something happens and you got to like really, you know, take your hand off of it, you don't have the risk of actually accidentally like cutting yourself. And of course you do have the guard for that as well, but this thing has, you know, it takes a few seconds for it to wind down, so you do have that risk of possibly cutting yourself if you have to make like a quick getaway, if that's what you want to call it. But anyway, that's my Hyper-Tough 20 volt lithium circular saw. It's okay, I guess. I mean, it does the job that I need it to do. It's not high-end Makita, DeWalt, Milwaukee. It's not even a Skill, but it does the job fairly well for the price that you pay. So anyway, if you need to make a few cuts and you need a circular saw and you're like wanting to know what brand you should get, if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, you might want to check out the Hyper-Tough. If that's a little too cheap for you, maybe go for a Skill or maybe even something from Harbor Freight, because that's probably a little bit more expensive than the Hyper-Tough as well, and it's probably about the same quality level, maybe a little bit better. But again, in my experience, the Hyper-Tough, it's okay. So anyway, that was Redneck Off the Range. Subscribe to my channel, and until next time, be safe.